True story, my brother picked up the Sony ZV-E10 and he sent me this picture. I asked him how it was pink and I didn't get a straight answer. I said congratulations to him and he said it wasn't for him, it was for his wife. So in an effort to try to be funny, I went onto Amazon and tried to find the cheapest camera possible, because my plan was to send him a link and say, well, maybe she can get you this camera for your birthday. But that opened up a huge can of worms, because then I started to browse and I found all these cheap cameras for about $100 that claim to shoot in 4K and 48 megapixel, which is double the ZV-E10. It said it had a 3-inch flip screen with the built-in light, internal stabilization, and it comes with a wide-angle lens, a macro lens, 2 batteries, and a 32GB micro SD card. So what's the catch? By the way, this particular camera is sold by many different companies and just marketed in different ways. In fact, one company even claimed that it shoots in normal video and slowly. Now I feel guilty because this entire time I've been telling people to go out and pick up the ZV-E10 and the ZV-1 for 7 times the amount. But before I go out and I make an apology video to all of you guys for telling you to go pick up these Sony cameras, I say we test this thing out against the Sony ZV-E10. Here's some questions that will be on your test. Is there a $600 difference between these two cameras and their image? How does the vlog footage look? How do both cameras' quality look? How do both cameras' colors look straight out of camera? How good is the stabilization? How long do the batteries last? How does the sharpness compare? What does the audio sound like? How good is the autofocus? Which camera is heavier? And a few bonus questions for extra credit. Is this camera just a gimmick? Or can it hold up to the Sony ZV-E10? And that's what we're gonna cover today on the Film Alliance. Now, I don't want to destroy this thing against the ZV-E10, so I'm going to do my very best to try to give this thing a fighting chance and get some actual cinematic shots with it. I'm going to throw it up on a gimbal, go handheld with it, put it in a perfect lighting condition, and also a horrible lighting condition. We're gonna do a little vlogging, a little time lapse, and take some pictures with it. I also know there's people here who can't afford the ZV-E10 as of yet, or maybe it's just still out of stock. So you might have to get one of these until these things come back on the shelf. And for the people who can't afford it, consider this a review video for your future camera. I'll be using the kit lenses on both of these cameras so we can have an apples to apples comparison. Because this $100 camera doesn't have an actual name, I'm gonna call it the company's name that sold it on Amazon, Vjianger. To do a quick rundown on the differences of the body of these cameras, Vjianger uses a micro SD slot on the bottom. It does have a pull-out screen, but it doesn't twist 180 degrees like the ZV-E10. It has 6 modes, which are photo, interval photography, video, slow motion, time lapse, and then playback. The screen is a little bit smaller, but it weighs less than the ZV-E10, coming in at 375 grams, and the ZV-E10 comes in at 460 grams. Both cameras have in-camera charging using the USB ports, although the ZV-E10 is a USB-C, and both cameras have an HDMI port, although the HDMI port on the ZV-10 is a micro HDMI. Both cameras have microphone input, although the ZV-E10 has a headphone output. Both cameras have a very similar button setup on the outside of the body. I bet you Sony copied Vjianger. When it comes to the menu system, clearly the ZV-E10 is more advanced, but you would expect that when you're paying so much more money. To be honest, I thought the Vjianger would only have 2 modes, photography and video, so I was quite surprised that there was a few different modes. The first test we're gonna do is attempt to get some cinematic footage of some dirt bike riders who claim to be professional. I'm gonna leave auto exposure, autofocus, and auto white balance on both of these cameras because you don't really have much control with the Vjianger, and I wanna see how the image comes out. For this test, I wanna see how that sun flare looks on these kit lenses, along with throwing these cameras up onto a gimbal to get some of that smooth footage. Another reason I wanna do this test is to see how much better the ZV-E10 is than a $100 camera, so that we can really appreciate that dynamic range that we get out of this camera. While we're getting this, let's also look at the image quality and the colors that are coming straight out of camera. first test we're gonna do is a vlog type shot. We're gonna listen to the audio to see how the audio comes out of these cameras. We're also gonna look at the color and the stabilization to see how stabilized they are. Stabilized. Here's the ZV-E10 as I walk and talk, as I vlog. Take a look at the stabilization. I have the camera about arm's length out from me. Also look at the exposure metering to see how it lights up my face. And listen to the audio so we can compare it to the Vjianger. So here's the Vjianger camera. Take a look at the stabilization as I walk and talk, and I'm holding the camera out about arm's length. Take a look at the exposure metering to see how it lights up my face. Also take a look at the colors in the background and listen to the audio so we can compare it to the ZV-E10. These are the small rig selection tripods. These are like the only tripods I use now because you can set them up and break them down so quick, and they break down to a little like 2-foot stick, and you can take it with you anywhere. So I'll leave these in the description if you're interested. So I want to make sure what I'm doing is setting these cameras up before that sun comes out, because I really don't want these cameras to be overblown. Test number 3 is going to be a time-lapse video. Let's put both of these cameras on a tripod. I don't even really know what I'm doing when it comes to the Vjianger other than just pressing record. So I'm just going to leave these cameras up on the tripod for about 15 minutes and hope for the best. Now that we're out at this hidden meadow, test number 4 will be for photography. Again, because I'm in full auto, I don't have much control other than what I'm framing out. I wanted to do some pixel peeping with both photos, so I pulled them up in Photoshop and I scaled in to see how much pixelation we're getting when we scale in about 200 to 300%. Test number 5 was testing out the batteries, so I set up both cameras shooting in 4K and I just left them on, not only to see how long the batteries would last, but also to see if either camera overheated. This is a good test for those of you who like to do talking head shots like this one. Test number 6 is a controlled lighting environment, and now that we're in a controlled lighting environment, I'm gonna use all of the knowledge that I have about lighting, and I'm gonna try to put these cameras in the best possible position to get the highest quality image, with everything perfectly exposed. Here's what that looks like. Now we're in a controlled lighting environment, and I'm using the Vjianger with all of the lighting knowledge I have to try to give this camera the best shot at having the highest quality picture using perfect exposure. Now let's turn this key light down to 5% so we can see what this camera looks like in low light. Now we have our key light down to 5% so we can see kind of what it looks like in a more moody lighting environment at 5%. And now we have the key light set to 1%, and it's pretty low light in here, so I'm excited to see how this handles it. And here's the same exact shot with the ZV-E10 in auto exposure. I have no idea how these two images are going to compare. Now we're doing our low light test with the ZV-E10. I've turned this light down to 5% so that we can see how it looks in low light. And finally, I turned the key light down to 1%. I can tell the ZV-E10 is all over the place with the white balance because back here looks completely purplish. And now for the final test, test number 8, let's test out slow motion on both of these cameras. I think when you turn the Vjianger to slowly, it just auto-populates to 1080, 120, just like the ZV-E10. So both of them are gonna be shooting in the same frame rate. Look for the noise, look for the grain, look for the stutter, look at the colors. I know the ZV-E10 sensor is a lot bigger, so it was able to handle a lot more dynamic range, and you can really see that when you look at the two images. If you're a fan of these types of videos, don't forget to like it so that I know to continue to make videos just like this one, and we can make this channel have a broader reach. I would recommend this camera to anyone who can't quite afford the ZV-E10, but they want to get started in videography. I would recommend this camera to anyone who can't quite afford the ZV-E10, but they want to get started in videography. But I would not recommend this camera if you're doing professional client work, mainly because you need to have a lot of control when it comes to exposure, white balance, and metering. But if you did want to start a YouTube channel and you can't quite afford the ZV-E10, then I think this is a great starter cam. And if you can't get this one right now, then maybe just ask your grandma for Christmas. If you want to see more videos like this one, let me know in the comments below. I'm Joe, your life coach and film professor, and until the next video, have a nice week. It looks like the Vjianger might beat out the ZV-E10 when it comes to photography. I can actually see the colors of the sky, which are blue, whereas the ZV-E10, the skies are blown out, which means that maybe that 48 megapixel that they advertise for is true. I think when you turn the Vjianger to slowly, to do a quick rundown on the outside, I'll be using both kit lenses that come on, I'll be using both the kit lenses. I read the entire manual from front to back to give this camera a good, oh, okay, we're gonna say that one.